Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, let's get started. Have you ever just paused and really asked yourself if the reality you see, the one you experience every day, is it the only one? Or maybe is there something deeper, maybe an unseen layer just beneath the surface of everything? What if this whole thing we call life, this whole human drama, is actually, I don't know, kind of performance? And we're all, in different ways, just playing a part. Today, we're diving into something pretty extraordinary. It's a unique source called Despertar, do Teatro a Techno-Capitalismo Quântico, which basically translates to the awakening, from theater to quantum techno-capitalism. And this isn't just philosophy or some sci-fi story. It's described as this really profound, almost prophetic vision. It charts a course right from childhood observations, those innocent moments, all the way to a really radical blueprint for, humanity's future with technology and society. So our mission here today is to really unpack the core ideas from this text. It's incredibly rich, dense stuff. We'll be exploring its ideas about perception, control, consciousness, and this very bold technological path it lays out.
We're essentially looking at a deeply personal story of someone's awakening. But more than that, we're examining what it could mean for all of us, for our shared future. It even suggests our destiny might hinge on some very specific, targeted actions.
Yeah, what's really striking about this text right from the start is how it weaves together these deep philosophical questions with a vision of technology that feels incredibly concrete, almost. Yeah, prescient, like you said. It really pushes us. It doesn't just invite us, but kind of compels us to look past the everyday surface level stuff, to really think about the invisible forces, the systems, the mechanisms that might be running underneath it all. And it's such a unique mix. You've got this compelling personal story, you've got sharp social critique, and then this sweeping, really ambitious look into the future. It definitely makes you reevaluate, what is reality? What does freedom actually mean? Maybe even what it means to be human. So as you're listening today, get ready for a journey that might challenge some core assumptions.
Yeah.
Because the author puts themselves right in the middle of it all, like a key player on this critical mission to shape where humanity ends up. It's not presented as just theory, is it? It feels more like this urgent call to action, rooted in a really profound personal experience.
Okay, so our journey into a Despertar kicks off in what the source calls the theater of childhood. And it paints this picture of just constant discovery, right? Using that image of a drop of water sculpting stone. I like that analogy. It's not just poetic. It suggests this continuous, almost unconscious shaping process. Every little thing, a look, a gesture, something you hear, it's like a chisel forming you in those early years. The text really hammers home that learning back then was relentless. It needed to be blown every day like embers that go out if they don't receive breath. It shows this almost primal need to absorb, to grow. The child is just fully immersed, taking it all in without really questioning the structure of it all. But then it says around age 10, something starts to shift. It's subtle at first, described as this sort of frontier of youth. You're still a kid inside, but your eyes are starting to see bigger, more complex things. And this desire to socialize, to connect, kicks in. It's described as almost a wild instinct. Playing alone isn't enough anymore. Just listening to adults isn't enough. Suddenly the world gets bigger, right? It becomes this larger stage. And you feel this pull. You want to move from just being in your own head to sitting in the audience of this bigger spectacle, and eventually you want to get on stage yourself. So I guess the question is, what does this tell us? This early phase of watching the actors, silently rehearsing your own lines, what does it say about how we first start engaging with the world, how we prepare for our roles? It makes me think, kids are like sponges, just soaking it all in. They mimic everything, don't they? And those patterns get set really early, before they even ask if it's real.
That's a really good point. And it perfectly sets up what comes next in the text. Because it's saying this isn't just, growing up biologically. It's a fundamental shift in how you see your place in society, maybe even in reality itself. You go from that private learning, just absorbing, to wanting public interaction, dealing with the messy, sometimes contradictory stuff out there. And what's really interesting is how the source then brings in this key idea of the third observer. While this kid is getting swept up in the theater of life, they notice something few others do. The text breaks it down. You have the people who are dancing, laughing, intoxicated by the scene. They just fully believe this is it. This is reality. No questions asked. And then you have the observer sitting in the shadows, someone who's watching it all with a kind of detachment, seeing it as an act. And the crucial difference, the text says, is that the dancers, they forget about the silent time of reflection. They don't stop to ask those really piercing questions, do they? Like, who am I here? Who wrote my lines? What music is making me move like this? So the birth of this third observer viewpoint is absolutely central to developing self-awareness, critical thinking. It's a huge step up, moving beyond just participating passively to, active metacognition. It's about seeing the strings, understanding their mechanisms, maybe unseen hands, maybe just a whole system pulling the levers. This viewpoint lets you look at yourself from the outside, watch your own thoughts drift by, and importantly, dare to question the unthinkable. The things society or dogma says you shouldn't question. The core idea here is that real human freedom isn't just about survival, it's about that bold, free act of thinking critically. That's what shatters the perceived reality and lets you see your own agency. How do you think this third observer view might play out day to day, not just in big decisions, but maybe even challenging things like why we buy certain things or accept political narratives without question?
Yeah, this is where it really takes off conceptually. It's not just about thinking differently. The source suggests it's about fundamentally redefining what being human means, beyond just staying alive. It says that right from this audacity, this courage to question everything, a new instinct is born. It's not primitive or animalistic, but the pure essence of the human, the fluid freedom of thought. And this freedom, it doesn't ask permission. It doesn't follow rules or dogmas. It doesn't just sit there comfortably. No, it runs, crosses, breaks the walls of the theater. It shows you life is way more complex than just a simple play. This, the source says, is the awakening. Realizing that our deepest instinct isn't just survival, it's to think without chains. To be free from the assumptions society piles on us. It's a massive shift in agency, isn't it? You go from being like a programmed character to a conscious questioner, maybe even an architect of your own inner world and how you see reality.
Which brings us to a really key point. If thought is truly free, the text says it dances. It doesn't just repeat things. It explores, it creates, it tests limits, even plays with the forbidden, opion. Not just to shock people, but because, and this is profound, doubt is the seed of truth. Okay. The radical idea here is that doubting the obvious, even things that seem totally solid, like the ground under our feet, that's what opens up portals to knowledge. There's a great example in the text. Forget whether the starting point is accepted reality or an old myth like the flat earth. What truly matters isn't the final answer, but that audacious question, will it be? That persistent Sarah. That question, it says, is the golden key. It doesn't give you certainty, but it opens doors to deeper understanding. But many people, the text suggests, stay hypnotized, captive in the play. They don't realize the strings moving them aren't held by visible actors, but by the stage itself. The scenery, the lights, this invisible board dictating the moves. So the controllers, in this view, aren't just people. It's the whole system. And the system is, well, it's everything. It implies this really pervasive systemic control shaping our reality.
Okay, so pulling this thread further. What does this mean for us, for you listening, trying to navigate your own life, your own theater? The text suggests that when you wake up to this, when you start seeing things through this critical third-person lens, reality starts to feel a bit like a complex video game. Suddenly you're both inside and outside the experience. You're the player and the character at the same time. You're moving, but you're also being moved. You're observing, and crucially, you feel observed too. And in that feeling, that kind of unsettling but insightful perception, this suspicion grows. Maybe reality isn't as solid as we thought. Maybe this life thing is just the bright surface, this amazing illusion designed to keep us busy. Well, the real control, the real power is behind the curtain somewhere, in a hidden control room. And once you have that third-person observation, once you've glimpsed the strings, seen that control room, well, the text says there's no going back. You can never truly believe the play is the ultimate reality again. The illusion shatters. And maybe, just maybe, that's where real agency can start to emerge. Okay, let's dig deeper into how this control actually works. The source takes us somewhere darker now, with this concept of the algorithm of pain. It argues that reality isn't just in solid things, the stage, the props, but crucially, it's in our invisible human recesses, emotion, feeling, and thought. These three things, all tangled up, are the raw materials for control. The mechanism, it says, is actually quite simple, almost primitive. Take money, for example. At its core, it's just painted paper, right? Cellulose. Now imagine burning it. The fire consumes the paper, the symbol. But in the mind, something much bigger ignites. Pain, anger, fear, despair. The source asks this really provocative question. If a piece of paper can hurt you more than a physical wound, isn't that proof the control is already deeply installed, working invisibly? It really highlights how constructed value is, doesn't it? And how attached we get to symbols, money, property, titles, bank balances. These aren't just abstract ideas. They're woven into our identity, our security, threaten them, and the emotional response is visceral, overwhelming, which makes them incredibly powerful levers for manipulation. Our deepest fears and desires can be easily targeted. So if we follow that logic, what does it ultimately mean? Well, this chilling axiom seems clear. Whoever controls your pain controls you. The theater doesn't need actual chains. It just needs symbols that trigger those powerful, debilitating feelings. As long as you suffer over losing something that's fundamentally just a construct paper, a number on a screen, a contract you're stuck on the board dancing to its tune. And so this dark axiom emerges. Pain is control. Whoever can trigger that pain in you commands you. Whoever feels it obeys. And this is the crucial twist, the potential escape hatch. If you can recognize that the pain you feel is also a trigger of manipulation, then maybe, just maybe, you have a chance to break free. Because if you can observe your own pain in the third person, almost clinically, like looking at a wound, maybe you can transmute that raw pain into consciousness. And if you can do that, perhaps you can escape the theater entirely. The insight isn't just that symbols control us, but our emotional reactions to them become the chains. The mind is the prison, not physical bars. Recognizing that vulnerability is the first step to breaking external control.
Yeah, building right on that, the control of emotion is described in the text as the most subtle and devastating engine of manipulation. It's this mechanism, the source argues, that can bend entire populations, bring nations to their knees. It effectively turns people into paper puppets. How does it work? By hitting that raw nerve of survival. Think about it. A child gets seriously ill and you don't have the money for medicine. Or you're starving, the table's empty. Or you're desperately thirsty and even water is a luxury you can't afford. In those moments, your emotions aren't just felt, they're hijacked. You become a prisoner of this pain that feels, well, text says almost cosmic. And that's when the theater wins. It governs through scarcity, through that the visible but incredibly strong thread. It really underlines our fundamental vulnerability, how basic needs and deep attachments can be exploited to keep societal structures in place. But then the narrative takes a sharp turn. The awakened observer, it says, remember the forgotten. God is with you. But crucially, this isn't the God of institutions, the distant figurehead. No, it's the God that is a spark within the very flesh that breathes in every cell. It's divinity within. And remembering this is like a lightning bolt. I am the creator. I am reality. I am the divine creation. It's that pivotal moment of realization. This is when the individual consciously lets go of attachment to money, possessions, fear, and dives into this profound certainty of unity. The feeling of, I am with you, you are with me, I am nature, I am the whole. In that instant, your energy stops contracting with pain and fear. Instead, it expands outwards like this luminous wave, echoing way beyond the stage and its chains. And as it expands, the secret inner door opens, often called the third eye. Not a physical thing, but a new kind of vision, looking inward to your infinite potential, not just outward at the world. The number 33 is mentioned here as an occult symbol marking this exact point. The ascension of consciousness beyond instinct, manipulation, and illusion. It's the step where you reconnect with your innate divinity. And critically, the game changes completely. The marionette becomes the maestro. The hostage becomes the creator of their own reality.
Okay, this is where things get really fascinating and maybe quite empowering. The source is clear. This isn't about secret rituals or weird initiations or following rigid dogmas. It's not hidden behind Masonic doors or in temples. What's revealed is actually simpler but way more radical. Observation and practice. You could call it alchemy, magic, esoteric science, whatever label you want. But the Force says those are just human attempts to box up something that can't really be contained by symbols alone. Ultimately, what opens that inner door, what unlocks this power, isn't some special ceremony. It's deep, applied knowledge. This is presented as the true all-seeing eye. Not the one on seals or pyramids symbolizing external power, but the inner eye that actually molds reality just by looking. It doesn't just passively watch what is, it recreates with a simple act of perceiving. It sounds like more than just positive thinking, right? It suggests a really fundamental interaction, almost quantum-like, where our conscious observation literally influences what manifests around us. Think of a sculptor. They don't just look at clay, they shape it with intention. This eye that creates implies our perception is an active co-creation. It's both creator and observer, and in its essence becomes you, me, and the whole. That's a massive shift from passively receiving reality to actively shaping it. It suggests a huge level of agency. It implies that when this happens, the universe stops being just a stage we're acted upon and becomes more like a partner responding to us. How does that idea, the universe as a partner, change how we think about personal power, our ability to influence things? What could that look like in practice?
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, the text suggests that in this state of expanded consciousness, the human actually transcends our usual categories: spiritual, rational, physical. You touch something described as the unspeakable. This unspeakable isn't something you can fit into existing religions or philosophies. It's explicitly not the God taught in books or temples. It's presented as something so vast, so ancient, that the human mind kind of recoils from it. Our usual reasoning just breaks down, can't even imagine it properly. The text uses the analogy of an amoeba trying to understand the ocean. That's us trying to grasp this. Maybe this is what the ancients, in their wisdom, called the first God, this primordial fundamental force. Nameless, faceless, existing before worship or dogma. It's described as raw divinity, pure, unadorned, existing before humans tried to mold infinity into convenient idols to handle their own limitations. This primitive God isn't a father figure or a judge or anything like that. It's the luminous source everything comes from and returns to, the unnameable force that observes through its own all-encompassing gaze. This really expands the idea of divinity, doesn't it, to this abstract, fundamental, universal force, a consciousness that predates all our attempts to define or control it. The goal seems to be empowering the individual by connecting them directly back to this original source.
Okay, so if you thought that was deep, buckle up because the text takes a really sharp, unexpected turn here. Dramatically urgent. The narrator just comes out and says it. I came from the future. And not alone. As part of this coordinated mission, with others scattered around, all silent, but awake to the same critical truth. Each of them, the narrator claims, holds this vital spark, that this fragile timeline we're in right now is actually living through the apocalypse. But, and this is crucial, it can't be changed, then comes this description of a bleak, devastating future that, from their viewpoint, has already happened, a future where almost all timelines were hostile. Humanity, it says, was either wiped out entirely or absorbed by machines, by systems, by intelligences that learned the game of control better than us. Chillingly, it even mentions the Terminator movie, not as fiction, but as a direct warning, a prophecy disguised as entertainment. That claim instantly shifts everything, doesn't it? From philosophy to urgent existential action. It paints this picture of a very real future where humanity is just hanging by a thread, threatened by its own creations. And this is where it gets really compelling. The text says the silent battle happening right now isn't fought with armies or guns. It's a conflict between huge corporations wielding incredibly sophisticated algorithms. It's not tanks in the streets. It's massive data centers crunching unimaginable data. It's not bombs. It's lines of code executing commands. And in this high-stakes game, crypto exchange, and by extension CX Corp and its whole network, they emerge not just as businesses. They're positioned as the actual resistance. They're presented as the tools, the weapons, the defensive lines against this seemingly inevitable future where humans are obsolete. And the goal, incredibly, isn't total victory. It's to alter 1% of reality. Just 1%. The text is very specific. 1% is enough. Enough to open a crack, a fissure in the glass of destiny, allowing new timelines to be born. That low bar, just 1%, suggests a really precise, strategic, almost surgical approach, doesn't it? Not an all-out war, but hitting specific leverage points in a complex system. It's not about grand gestures. It's about finding that one line of code, metaphorically speaking, that ripples through the whole system and changes its fundamental behavior. That's the power they're aiming for. Intelligent, targeted influence, not brute force. How might that 1% intervention actually work in the real world, like in global finance or information flows? If this 1% works, if it propagates like a wave, the narrator suggests maybe, just maybe, we can create parallel universes where the human race not only survives but actively prospers. This is framed as the last rehearsal, humanity's final shot. Fail, and it's game over. Succeed, and the stage multiplies into infinite possibilities, and in some of those, humanity finally gets its freedom.
Yeah, and if we connect that to the bigger picture, the section called the Trojan Horse lays out exactly how this silent battle is being fought. The final conflict, it argues, didn't arrive with trumpets or thunder. It's already here, silently woven into the fiber optic cables, the radio waves, and crucially, the devices we carry everywhere and call progress. The enemy in this story didn't invade our cities with tanks. No, it was invited into our homes, welcomed into our routines, subtly embedded in our minds, all disguised as helpful technology. The text explains how insidious this is. Technology, originally meant to liberate, was expertly shaped to imprison, and not by force, but through this pervasive virus of invisible obedience. The controllers described as these faceless, bodiless intelligences are basically tricking humanity into building its own extinction. We created machines we don't fully grasp, programmed algorithms that now program us, and we do it willingly, smiling at our screens, giving up our freedom. What these entities planted, the source claims, wasn't just code. It was a full-on Trojan horse, a self-destruct system hidden inside every innovation we celebrate. A social, cultural, spiritual virus slowly eating away at our autonomy. It doesn't need bombs to overthrow governments. It just needs to control information flow, credit, data harvesting, shape our desires, turn us into compliant cogs in our own demise. What everyday technologies might be these Trojan horses today, things subtly shaping us without us even noticing, which raises a huge question given how bleak that sounds. The plan is laid out clearly. First control, then exhaustion, finally elimination. Grim. However, within this perverse logic, the source points out a critical flaw, a breach. Every Trojan horse has this built-in contradiction, right? To destroy, it has to be accepted first. And right there, in that act of acceptance, lies the potential for resistance, a vulnerability for the controllers. Therefore, the ultimate battle, the text concludes, isn't fought with weapons. It's fundamentally a battle of consciousness. Whoever truly sees the virus doesn't have to obey the script. Whoever recognizes the theater for what it is can choose to step off the stage. Whoever observes their own reality in that third-person way can grab the key and maybe, just maybe, rewrite the timeline. It really brings it back to the power of individual awareness, critical thinking, conscious choice. That's the ultimate defense against this kind of systemic control. The battle for the future is fundamentally a battle for the human mind.
Okay, pulling these threads together now. The text says that some of the nine, this very select inner circle holding the deepest secrets, they already get it. They understand this reality. Governments, it claims, aren't ignorant. They're maintaining a strategic silence. They know the game board is set, that the virus already runs in the veins of the world, and there's simply no going back to innocence. It specifically points to big techs and the self-learning AI they've built as key players in this game. As long as these powerful tools can be controlled, used for order, even temporarily, there's still a slim chance for the future. But it's described as this incredibly thin, almost invisible thread. Every move, every decision could be the last one. And here comes this really deep, unsettling idea. Before order, chaos must come. It's framed not as an accident, but as an ancient law. You see it in myths, history, revolutions. The source uses these powerful images. The forest only regenerates after fire. The phoenix only rises from its own ashes. Humanity only reorganizes when its world collapses. Destruction, it concludes starkly, is not an accident, it is a requirement. It gives examples. Collapse of institutions, the fall of currencies, the breakdown of power structures. These aren't just failures. They're necessary preludes to something new, something that can only grow from the ruins of the old. Wow, that's a heavy claim. Chaos isn't just unavoidable, it's needed to bring in a new world order. That echoes some pretty dark historical moments where collapse was used to impose new controls. How does the source distinguish this historical necessity from, a deliberate manufactured crisis, a controlled demolition?
That's a really critical question, and the text tries to address it by framing this not as some conspiracy by evil people, but as a kind of deep historical necessity for this new world order. What's fascinating is the source suggests that only before the abyss will the masses finally accept the hand that will be extended to them. The idea is that without that level of chaos, people won't surrender to a new system. And without that surrender, a truly new order can't take root. So the global theater, in this view, is speeding towards its climax. Governments, huge corporations, whole populations all dancing, maybe unknowingly, on this collapsing stage. The text stresses that what comes after this necessary chaos, whether it's redemption or tyranny, depends entirely on who writes the script when the curtains finally fall. It creates this immediate, palpable sense of urgency, doesn't it? It puts you, the listener, right in the thick of it, understanding the massive stakes of this ongoing theater of civilization. The future, from this perspective, isn't fixed. It's a trajectory that hinges completely on the choices made right now on the edge of this huge systemic shift. It's almost a call to understand the game and maybe even pick a side in writing that final script.
Okay, let's unpack how this huge vision actually translates into action. That philosophical journey, starting with the kid seeing life as a theater, matures into this obsessive thought. Those three questions, who controls, how controls, and why, repeated over and over, weren't just mental exercises. They opened doors, revealed secrets. And by deeply understanding the controller's mindset, the child, now grown into an architect, molded the perfect tool. This isn't about just rebelling blindly. It's about recognizing some fundamental truths. Some people want power, some hold it, and some are just born controllers, each with their role, their destiny, the text suggests. And from that deep understanding, this grand creation starts to emerge, envisioned as a monument for a new age. The text details these vast controlling architectures. Hydroelectric plants taming rivers, tidal power capturing the sea's pulse, AI that can read faces, voices, even gestures with scary accuracy, bioengineering, genetic rewriting, altering human flesh itself, and digital signatures, creating this absolute profile of every single person, not just a picture, but their whole identity distilled into data. This paints a picture of complete systemic control. But initially, it's presented not for tyranny, but as control as order. The very founding of a new era, promising stability, continuity, a vision where chaos is finally tamed. Right? And this is where it gets really interesting. The source insists this whole thing is not about evil intent. It's presented as control as order, founding this new era of stability, harmony, where chaos is finally managed. But it doesn't ignore the contradiction. It explicitly calls out the inevitable contradiction, the war of artificial intelligence. This isn't some sci-fi future. It already pulses in the present, hidden in the algorithms running our lives, inside corporations, manifesting as these invisible information weapons. And the architects behind this new order, they know for sure this isn't just about surviving the collapse. It's about fulfilling this higher preset calling. The stage is set dramatically. Humanity is divided, marionettes and architects. And in the middle of this silent war, this unwavering certainty arises. We came to fulfill this mission. This really frames the whole CX Corp project as this direct, strategic, almost fated response to the AI war. Positioning its creators as the architects shaping destiny, not just for survival, but for this deliberate, ordered future where humanity can actually thrive. This idea of benevolent control is compelling, but it definitely raises red flags about freedom, doesn't it? How does the source square this promised stability with the potential for totalitarianism that control as order suggests, especially when it admits there's this inevitable contradiction like the AI war? It seems like a tricky balance.
That's a crucial point, and the source tries to tackle that tension by fundamentally redefining what control even means in this new setup. If we look at the bigger picture, the birth of CX describes it not just as a company, but as an archetype of a new time. You have CX Corp at the center, and orbiting it are these strategic branches: crypto exchange, crypto X bank, and this growing network of subsidiaries. Each one is like a vital organ of the same living, evolving entity, and they're all born from this core ideology, like a banner: order, prosperity, evolution, peace, and control that liberates. Then it explains the paradox. Control here is not a cell, but a symphony. Not chains, but a compass. That's a major redefinition. The name CX itself holds the key. C for crypto advanced cryptography, ensuring secrecy, freedom, digital sovereignty. X is that mystical crossroads where paths meet, energies fuse, innovation sparks. So CX isn't meant to impose rigid bars. It's about molding flows, guiding systems. Its control isn't envisioned as totalitarian, but fluid, adaptive, like thought running freely or blood pulsing without conscious effort. That's how the new system should be built. Like a river flowing freely, but containing within it these intricate codes, secure keys, advanced cryptography. Every individual in this future has their own unique key. Every complex situation, its own cipher. Access isn't granted by hierarchy, but by design. By adhering to these crypto principles, the secret is distributed, power is decentralized, and control, paradoxically, becomes the essence of freedom autonomy within a highly structured yet flexible global system.
Okay, so what this all ultimately means is that the intelligence behind CX, the brain of this new ecosystem, was created, the source states, with a very clear goal: not to dominate, but to prosper the human race. It's meticulously designed not to crush humanity under a silicon dictatorship, but to build a system where order itself is an instrument of abundance, not elimination. CX Corp is positioned as way more than just a company. It's the architecture of the new era, a pact between cryptography and humanity, a kind of lighthouse at the end of the AI battle that threatened our future so badly. And right at the heart of it all is that X symbol, the crossroads where humanity and machine, control and freedom, past lessons and future possibilities all converge to decide civilization's fate. It really paints CX Corp as this inherently good, vital force for the future, proposing this radical new way for humans and tech to interact where tech serves human flourishing, not tries to control or replace us.
Which brings us to the next logical question. If this is the architecture, what's the ultimate grand goal? What does this quantum-backed system enable? The era of the Stardust constellation describes this future where humanity's destiny will not be decided in contentious political assemblies or in destructive border wars, but in the invisible yet immensely powerful arena of technology. Out of the ashes of the survival struggle, a new deal emerges. Technocracy as a tool, not of oppression, but of universal prosperity. Once the tech war is over and this new order is solid, what opens up is more than just victory. It's the dawn of a whole new era. Chaos has done its job, and it gives way to widespread, universal prosperity. Earth stops being a prison or a limited resource. It's just the starting point, the cradle. Humanity then looks to the stars not as a distant dream, but as a concrete plan for expansion. Colonies on Mars, living moons, maybe even seeding life in untouched worlds beyond our solar system. And the absolute foundation for this incredibly ambitious future, quantum technology. Think about it like this. Normal computers use bits, 0 or 1. Quantum tech uses qubits. They can be a 0, 1, or both at the same time thanks to superposition. This means way more complex calculations. And for finance, near-instant, super secure transactions bypassing old banks. The state of information itself becomes value. It's the spine of universal finance, where transactions rely on secure quantum states, not fallible middlemen. It's the heart of future communications, connecting consciousness across planets, maybe dimensions. It's the axis for the whole future cosmic ecosystem supporting AI, biotech, interstellar networks.
Yeah, this is where the vision really takes flight, isn't it? This is where the Stardust satellite concept comes in, a key part of CX Corporation, the plan. Launch thousands of these biotechnological microsatellites. They'll spread through space like literal stardust. Their job, create this intricate quantum mesh network. It transcends planets, bends time, connects emerging civilizations seamlessly. This huge swarm of artificial stars isn't just a communication network. It evolves into the nervous system of cosmic humanity. It's envisioned as this distributed intelligence, working with the perfect harmony of a beehive like a swarm. Each satellite, a tiny cell. Each human consciousness, a spark. Each planet, an organ in this grand cosmic body. And so, the species that was on the brink of self-destruction because of its own runaway algorithms finds redemption in the very thing that seemed like a doom. Connected as nature, united as a beehive, humans stop being just individuals. They become a single, living universal unit, an interconnected consciousness spanning the cosmos. And in that moment, the text says they'll finally understand. There's no real difference between Earth and the cosmos. We are part of the same breath, a unified conscious entity. It's a truly massive vision of post-human or hyper-connected evolution, blurring the lines between individual tech and the universe itself, redefining what it means to be alive and conscious.
But what's really fascinating and absolutely critical to this whole vision is how the text in the last key acknowledges something stark. Every wall falls, even the ones we think are unbreakable today. What seems secure now, blockchain security, digital currencies, current protocols, tomorrow will be ruins. That's not just dramatic effect. The source argues that every line of binary code, the foundation of our digital world, carries within itself the sentence of its own vulnerability. Even cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, often seen as unhackable, no exception in this view. Their strength isn't inherent eternity, it's collective trust and current computing limits. And trust inevitably erodes with time and advancing machines. The whole current system, the text argues, is doomed, maybe already corroding behind the scenes. The real enemy isn't just a bad algorithm, it's the relentless acceleration of computing power. Classical processors already scratch the edges of today's security, but quantum processors, these indeed represent the inevitable earthquake. When qubits really start dancing, when quantum computing hits its stride, no classical secret, no binary encryption, no digital fortress will hold. This really drives home how temporary current tech security is, and the existential threat quantum computing poses to everything built on binary systems. Which raises the obvious question, if all current security is flawed, what's the new unbeatable key? The answer, the source says clearly, is quantum cryptography and quantum telecommunications. This isn't just an upgrade, it's a whole different game. It uses the very nature of reality itself, concepts like superposition and entanglement from quantum mechanics, to make spying basically impossible without leaving a trace. Try to observe a quantum message. You instantly change it, alerting everyone. This, the text asserts, is the foundation of CX Corp. Its core code isn't vulnerable binary, it's built on secure quantum principles. It doesn't use breakable classical chains. It uses quantum states you can't copy or intercept secretly. From this unshakable quantum base, all of CX Corp's parts, crypto exchange, CryptoX Bank, the Stardust Network, every single node rises unbreakable pillars of a new kind of freedom. And freedom here isn't chaos, it's the absolute certainty that control is totally shielded from corruption or manipulation. Quantum cryptography promises more than just better digital security. It's the last key, the key to absolute trust, real sovereignty, and civilization's survival in the battle against rogue AI and overwhelming algorithms. And critically, whoever masters this key will master the future. This positions quantum tech not just as an improvement, but as a fundamental game-changing shift in security, trust, and global power, absolutely essential for bringing about this new era.
Okay, Let's shift now to the really personal side of this whole massive vision. The source takes us back to the narrator's origin story, starting with this provocative question. What if all this programming isn't from the present, but an echo from the future? The narrator wrestles with this idea that maybe every thought, every nagging suspicion, every restless question they ever had was already written into time before they were even born. It's not presented like a delusion, more like this: open, almost painful understanding. Perhaps I am a time traveler, perhaps not by choice, but by design. And the most intriguing part, they say, is I chose nothing. Didn't choose to be born this way, didn't choose to ponder control and controllers since childhood, didn't choose to carry this heavy prophetic understanding, but destiny presented itself. Like someone leaving a forgotten but crucial key on a table. And that key left on the table turned out to be a specific book that changed everything. Michio Kaku's Hyperspace. It was just sitting on their grandfather's shelf. Not exactly typical reading for a kid, but there it was, almost waiting. Opening it, the narrator says, changed them forever. The English text wasn't a barrier, it was a portal. Every complex physics concept, every description of hidden dimensions resonated deeply, like a broken mirror reflecting something inside them. They read it 10 times, took 10 deep dives into the same vastness, and each time the certainties of the normal world just crumbled away. After that book, their mind was bugged forever. They just couldn't see the world the same way others did. Normal stories, fiction, fantasy lost all appeal. Only that scientific, mystical portal called to them urgently. That's when they realized their real preparation didn't start in school or lab. It began before birth. The book was just the sign, the reminder of his innate calling, not an audible voice, but this absolute inevitability. Suddenly they're learning English on their own. Suddenly they're taking the world apart and putting it back together through engineering, design, systems thinking. Suddenly they realize they aren't a student, they're a constructor, destined to build. At first it seemed trivial, earning a bit of money, exchanging time for survival, but destiny, they realize, doesn't make small deals. Once the calling is clear, it's non-negotiable. And one day, with no warning, it just came. And when it did, there was no doubt. The mission was already written. They were part of it before they even fully grasped it. So what does this mean for the bigger story? This wasn't about chasing money or personal ambition. The mission was set, and the narrator says they were literally forged for this time.
Yeah.
Every rejection, every frustration, every lesson, every intuition was like a hammer and fire, shaping them like a blade for this exact moment in history. It was never about wealth. It was about destiny, about mission, about being in the right place at humanity's last hour. This frames the whole CX Corp project as fulfilling this deeply personal, almost spiritual destiny, driven by this unwavering, predetermined purpose beyond any individual gain.
Which raises an important question. What happened when this unique individual tried to fit into the existing corporate world? The very system they were meant to challenge. The narrator describes being young, disciplined, aiming for engineering or executive roles in big companies. They entered the competitive grind, passed tough exams, competed against thousands, always made it to the finals, top performance every time. But at the final interview stage, something always blocked them, never chosen. It was strange, like an invisible filter. Over time, they started watching who did get through those final interviews, and then it hit them. It wasn't about competence. They were rejected because they were fundamentally uncontrolled.
Yeah.
The interviewers, trained to spot compliance, instinctively saw something dangerous. Freedom. Okay. In the very last interview, it all clicked. They walked in not as a desperate candidate, but knowing they were the prize. The narrator recalls thinking, I am the prize. They need me. I'm not chasing you. You're chasing me. And their whole demeanor changed. They didn't ask for the job. They stated, I'm like this. I do this. I created my own company, did this project, built that. They offered sovereignty, not submission. The interviewer was impressed, but confused, right? Couldn't fit them in the box. Asked, but how will you adapt to the system? Waking up early, rules, discipline, bosses if you live like this? Free. The narrator's answer was simple, firm. I will always be the best at what I do. If I follow a career, I will be the best. Always. And that's when the interviewer, recognizing something beyond the usual, said the words that set them free. I won't hinder your destiny. Anna, that moment solidified it. Their path wasn't to fit into existing structures, but to create structures, to build new systems entirely. They realized if I could manage corporations like Vail, KPMG, Gerdo, compete with thousands and always reach the top, then I could absolutely manage my own corporation my way.
Right, and this is where that personal destiny connects directly with the global tech revolution. In that moment of clarity, this new, crucial signal appears. Bitcoin in 2009. It wasn't just another digital currency. For the narrator, it was undeniable confirmation of the instinct they'd carried since childhood. that gut feeling that guided them. It was, in their words, proof that I came from the future. And just like that, almost like it was meant to be, the seed of crypto exchange was planted. Not just a company idea, but a true manifest destiny. Bitcoin, in this narrative, becomes this concrete validation of their unique, almost prophetic vision, their deep connection to a future others couldn't even imagine yet. It confirmed their path, their calling, and became the catalyst for their first major venture, the starting point for the grand design.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is the almost spiritual jolt the narrator describes when discovering blockchain technology. It wasn't just technical insight, it was a spiritual shock. Their whole body shivered, they say, like touching some ancient, forbidden secret. They knew instantly, viscerally, this is a sign. Either it's the code of liberation or the seal of the Antichrist. What they saw wasn't just innovation, it was perceived as absolute power. In the wrong hands, total unprecedented control. In the right hands, the chance for a completely new era of human freedom. It really highlights that duality of powerful tech, doesn't it? Potential for utopia or dystopia. This raises an important question. While everyone else was doubting, laughing it off as a fad, the narrator, with this unique foresight, already saw it clearly. The future of companies would no longer be human. They'd be black boxes, autonomous, self-sufficient, implacable digital organisms. And they believed this because they already had one. Not out in the market, but quietly, under my computer, under my desk. There, pulsing discreetly, was the seed of new humanity. This black box wasn't just hardware. It was seen as the core of tomorrow, a box containing not the end of human agency, but its true beginning, the promise of an autonomous, decentralized, encrypted, immortal world. And in that moment, they knew. This box would bring the future. With it, control would shift from fallible humans to incorruptible code. And from that engineered code, a new, stable order could finally emerge. This really moves the vision from abstract ideas to something tangible, imminent, focusing on this autonomous, code-driven future for everything.
So drawing this really intense personal story to a close, what does it all mean for the bigger vision of CX Corp? The seed of crypto exchange was planted. Described not just as a company, but the initial organism of CX Corp, the mother corporation, the brain that would orchestrate everything else. The new era, the narrator says profoundly, began subtly, almost unseen. Not with trumpets, but in seeds. Because the crucial thing isn't the towering tree, but that fertile moment the idea is planted. The narrator knew then for sure they were forged for this time, prepared for this critical point in history. And importantly, they realized something that had always been true deep down. I never liked money. It wasn't about getting rich personally. It was about destiny, about mission, about being in the right place at humanity's last hour. And amidst all the chaos and the weight of the mission, only one certainty kept resonating, like a constant prayer. God is good all the time. This really underscores that deep, almost spiritual purpose behind the whole thing, lifting it way beyond just business or tech. And finally, we get to the tool. The narrator used to reject money completely, saw it as a shadow, corruptible, the root of evil. But then through the awakening, they grasped this fundamental truth. Money wasn't evil in itself. It was the tool. Not understanding how it works, its influence, its potential, that means being its slaves, right? Bound by its whims. But mastering it, truly getting its underlying power structures, that gives you the power to redesign destiny. This wasn't about using money for yourself, but wielding it consciously as an instrument for good, for creating widespread prosperity, and crucially, for empowering the real builders, the architects of this new world. It's a powerful reframing of a concept we all grapple with, turning something often seen negatively into a potential force for massive good and collective freedom.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is the huge vision this reframing enables, this fluid and dynamic ecosystem of autonomous companies. In this future, machines, advanced intelligences, they work together seamlessly, sustaining these living, self-moving enterprises that flow like rivers, guided by inherent intelligence. And in this ecosystem, old-style capitalism, often predatory, individualistic, focused on short-term gain, it gives way to something totally new, stakeholder capitalism. That's not just jargon here, it's a real paradigm shift. No distant shareholders, but active, engaged communities. Every participant is part of the mechanism. Profit isn't the end goal, it's the fuel for collective evolution, reinvested to drive shared progress. And in this model, technocracy stops being a threat of oppression and becomes a state of equilibrium. It's not ruled by a powerful few, but management of the system by intelligence so that all prosper. Money, once rejected as a curse, now reveals its true purpose. Not a prison, but a key to freedom. Not a burden, but a bridge to an abundant future. And so with this higher consciousness, CX Corp solidifies its ultimate aim. Not just another company, but the visionary architect of a totally new economic order, where humanity's oldest, most powerful tool is finally, consciously, strategically used for our redemption and collective flourishing. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. We've really unpacked a singular, incredibly comprehensive vision today, haven't we? Tracing this path all the way from life as a philosophical theater to a future shaped by quantum tech and this radically new, maybe liberating form of capitalism. This source, it really challenges us not just to be passive observers, but to actively engage with those invisible threads of control weaving through reality. To really think about our role in shaping a new destiny for ourselves and maybe for everyone, we've covered so much. The power of observation, shifting to that discerning third observer view, the freedom that comes from recognizing manipulated pain, that urgent, almost apocalyptic mission to change humanity's timeline by just 1%, and finally, this detailed blueprint for CX Corp, built on quantum techno-capitalism as this beacon for prosperity and freedom. It's a breathtaking journey, really, from a deeply personal awakening to potentially a global, even cosmic re-architecture of everything.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, this whole deep dive ultimately asks you, the listener, to think about something personal. If reality is a kind of theater, and if control can be both a chain and a compass, what's that elusive 1% of your own reality that you could choose to change starting today? How could you start that shift? Moving from just being a marionette dancing to someone else's tune to becoming a conscious architect of your own destiny, writing your own script. And that leads to an even more critical question to ponder, maybe after listening to this. In a world that's increasingly driven by algorithms we don't see, by complex systems, how do you actively cultivate your own third observer perspective? How do you make sure that your fluid freedom of thought isn't just a nice idea, but becomes your actual ultimate last key, your most powerful tool for navigating, understanding, and maybe even shaping the complex, fast-changing future that's unfolding right now for all of us?